开箱婆罗洲。
欢迎收听这一期的开箱婆罗洲。你好，我是 Celes 美玲。那今天的这一期节目呢非常特别，我们会聚焦在砂拉越的陶瓷工艺。那说到这个陶器呢，其实陶器的出现源远流长。那根据美国陶瓷协会的 American Ceramic Society 的记载，目前已知最古老的陶瓷制品可以追溯到旧石器的晚期。那古代人们呢都需要一些生活上的需求，像是盛水啊，还有收纳物品等等，就促使了陶器的发明。后来也融入了具有代表性的文化底蕴，拥有很高的艺术价值。那陶器演变到现在21世纪的形式、作用和艺术价值方面又有怎样的变化呢？在砂拉越这里，陶瓷工艺可以说是慢慢的没落。那为什么会有这样的一个说法呢？今天的开箱婆罗洲，我们就要来好好的认识陶瓷品，聊一聊陶瓷因何而没落。请来的就是砂拉越陶瓷家兼 Gardencraft 的创办人 Tuson Chong 来到节目和我们聊一聊我们砂拉越的陶瓷品到底有什么特别。欢迎 Tuson 来到今天的节目。
Hello.
Say hi to our listeners.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Kuching.
哦，哇哦！目前我们知道 Tuson 你自己有自己的陶艺展嘛，叫做 Naked Raw Clay of Sarawak。那目前还在举行当中，一直到3月20号。那我们也发现这一次的展览呢，是围绕在动物还有植物的元素，所以可以和我们具体的说一说这一次展览的主题吗？The theme of this exhibition.
Okay. So, in general, our theme is naked, the raw clay of Sarawak. We actually came up with this theme because of the Nia Caves. The Nia Caves are really old, and it was the first place where Tom Harrison, the previous curators of Sarawak Museum, they found prehistoric Neolithic ceramics.
Okay.
So from there, we drew our inspiration from the caves and the early ceramics. And we're also very lucky, to have one of our collaborators, Dr. Franca Cole, from the Sarawak Museum, as part of our team to basically tell us more about the old pieces of ceramics that were found in the caves. So our theme is naked, the raw clays of Sarawak, and we want to emphasize that we want to showcase the beauty of Sarawakian clay. Yeah.
Beauty of Sarawak clay， 哇！所以其实可以看得出这一次的展览呢，也是背后有一个团队去支持着你们去筹办这一个展览。那其实除了这一次的这个主题，像你刚才说，你们的这个 idea 是从这个 Nia Caves 拿到这个灵感，我们也发现这一次的这个展览，它里面有很多动植物的元素 ，a lot of the element of flora and fauna。So 它是不是有特定的原因让你用这一些动植物的元素呢？
Okay, so for the theme, we are based mostly on a lot of flora and fauna things because of the caves. The caves, as we know, is in the jungle, and the surroundings of the cave, the stalactites, the stalagmites in the caves. So that was the basis of our theme to create a jungle, more like a jungle, to replicate the Nia Cave in the restaurant which we are having our exhibition in, which is restaurant Budaya Sarawak, at Waterfront.
OK， 所以就是整一个运用到动植物的元素，也是为了符合这一个主题，让它更有一个在地的感觉。那除此之外呢，可不可以请Tuson也和我们简单的说一说，我们在这一次的这个展览上面有机会看到怎样的陶瓷作品？What kind of products or ceramic or pottery we can get to see in this exhibition?
Okay, for the exhibition itself, you'll be seeing an installation art. That is the one primarily of the stalactites and stalagmites inspired by Nia Cave, together with all the greenery, the trees, and the plants.
Yeah,
you'll see how our take on the elements which we twist and see in our own view of how it should look like. So most of the art pieces were actually made by Nia Latif, local artist based in Sarawak. Yeah.
Okay. Other than this?
Other than that, you will be looking at works by 5 other artists which is
including you, right?
Including me, yes, including me. There'll be Gerald Gore, there'll be Nabila Abdullah, there'll be Ong Shui, Nia Latif, and myself.
Okay, so it's actually all the products of the local artists will be showcased in these exhibitions.
Correct.
Okay.
Besides that, we also have a showcase of, I would say students, but they're not like young. Yeah, so people who actually have attended Gardencraft workshops, and over the years they have produced very beautiful sculptures, usable utilitarian wares. So we have actually called them back to showcase their items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. So speaking of Gardencraft， 就是我们也知道你就是这个陶艺工作室 Gardencraft 的创办人嘛，所以蛮好奇你是从什么时候开始接触到陶瓷，然后又是为什么会对陶艺产生兴趣呢？Like what sparks your interest in this in pottery?
Okay, what sparks my interest in pottery? Okay, basically I got interested in pottery since I was young because I collected antiques. Like of course in the beginning it was very cheap stuff.
Oh,
then
you mean like when you are young?
Yeah,
the antiques is actually quite cheap during that time.
I only bought the cheap ones because like broken one cannot afford man.
Okay.
Yeah. Then after that, I always wanted to know how they were made. But in Kuching, we couldn't find any, when we go to the factories, they don't really tell you how it's made and don't show you. So when I went to Singapore to study, my aunt, who was taking pottery classes, she asked me whether I wanted to follow her for the courses. And I said yes, because I wanted to know how those porcelain pieces were actually made. So from there, I started, after the first day I got hooked. It was just very eye-opening, the whole process, and what can be made of clay. It was just very interesting, and that's how I got hooked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how long have you been learning the pottery?
Okay, I started in 2004.
Whoa,
That was my first class. And on and off, I did it, even though I was working in Singapore at that time. On and off, I would still go for classes. Yeah.
Okay, so you came back to Kuching, and that is when you started to have your own workshop in Kuching, or before that you still have do other careers in Kuching?
I'm actually, I graduated in landscape architecture. I had my own company in Kuching, but the company didn't work out. Yeah, so after that I decided, what do I actually want to do? And pottery came to my mind, and I founded Gardencraft company.
Okay. So speaking of these garden crafts, right? 你觉得你自己的个人风格是什么？ What's your personal style?
My personal style. Okay, basically when I come up with an idea, I'll try to sketch it out, and then after that I will just work on the clay itself. And I don't really determine the exact style from the start, but the clay will speak to you, and the clay would actually, it will evolve when you're touching it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how it comes out as a piece.
Okay.
Because clay is so versatile and it's very soft. So even if you draw it out, you can't actually follow exactly everything that's supposed to be. So it will just evolve as you're holding it, as you're shaping it. Yeah. So if you ask me what specific style, I wouldn't say like, Japanese style or Korean.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically more of my own style. Yeah.
Especially importance when you touch it, the texture is also quite important, right?
Yeah.
So usually where you draw your inspiration from when you want to start to do a craft?
Sometimes the inspiration comes when you're holding the piece of clay, because sometimes when you get a piece of clay, the shape itself resembles something. So sometimes when you just look at it, this looks like an animal. Then you just start to press it in, make it more like an animal, and it becomes
just a piece.
The piece, correct.
Okay.
Especially for bowls, when you are doing hand-built bowls, the piece of clay is not just a round ball of clay, but it has like indentations, and sometimes the indentations can look quite beautiful. So you emphasize it, you work on it, and it becomes an art piece after that.
Wow, yeah. And speaking of your own your products, right? What I remember clearly is when I went to the exhibitions, and then you mentioned about there was a cup that is specially for your own.
Oh yeah.
that is suit to your thumb
My
or
own-
something,
my
your
own
own
hand.
finger, yeah.
Yeah, my hand size.
Yeah.
Okay, basically what happened for that piece was like, I was throwing a cup, and then there was a phone call or something. I can't remember exactly. Then my hand actually smashed it, but then the shape was quite nice. So I actually took it out and I used my own fingers to like mold the shape to make it intentional. Yeah, from
okay.
something spoiled, I made it into something which is intentionally spoiled.
Okay, yeah. So that is also how you play with arts lah.
Correct.
I think it doesn't have a certain form or certain definitions of it.
Correct.
Yeah. So 刚才就是 Tuson 有说到，通常他创作的这些灵感呢，都是来自于生活，而且有时候也没有自己特定的一个风格啦。最主要就是创作时候的那个触感是很重要的，特别是在他展览上有一个杯子是有他完全只是属于他自己个人风格，还有他个人手掌的一个杯子，所以我觉得这一点是非常的特别，也就是艺术呢，没有被限制于任何的框架还有形式的。那接下来我们就来说一下这个陶瓷的品质会被什么关键的因素来影响吧，就是 What are the factors that determine the quality of a pottery?
Okay, for our local pottery, I would say the factors that affect it would be, number one is the workmanship of the finishing of the pot itself. For example, the carvings, if you use a sgraffito carving, it needs to be smooth, the lines need to be continuous and not just very rough and like you can see it's like made in 5 minutes, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, not some confidence like.
Yeah, correct.
when
The
you
confidence,
do. Okay.
the confidence of the artist is very important. How the piece flows. Yeah, that's
okay.
one of the most important. Second would be how the quality of the clay, the temperature of the firings.
Okay.
Yeah. So the higher it's fired means the more difficult and the more chances for the item to crack or break. Yeah. So if it's fired very high and the piece is still around, means that the potter or the artist knows exactly what they're doing. And that would, the only way to know that is through experience, and which takes very long. So that's how for me personally, how I determine the quality of the piece. Yeah.
OK， 所以就是基本上决定这个陶瓷品质，也除了在看这个陶瓷的这个质量啊，它的这些制造它的这些环境，像是它的这个 materials， 还有它的温度以外呢，这个陶瓷家或是陶艺家本身的这个功夫还有经验也是非常重要的。那接下来呢，我们就看到你的展览当中，可以看到早期的这个陶瓷品都是运用在日常的生活中，比如像是用作餐具啊、茶壶、花瓶等等。然后后来也慢慢的有这些艺术的元素，他们可能会被制成一些纪念品或者是艺术品。所以可以看到陶瓷的这些价值还有作用，也会随着时间的演变而出现变化。那你认为早期的陶瓷品和目前的陶瓷品有什么差别呢？Like the pottery in the early age and now, what are the differences in terms of the quality, the uses, or the form of artwork? Are there any differences for you?
Yeah, there are many differences actually. Okay, so for this exhibition, we also have a very unusual timeline which starts from the 1900s all the way to maybe about 1990s to early 2000s. And we only showcase until then because after that, there was a decline in the production of pottery. And the styles and everything that came out became very commercial and very, okay, you need some taste. It's hard to explain, but when you look at it, you will know. Yeah.
So, what do you mean by the decline of the pottery?
Okay, because when I say decline, I mean that it's like when you try to produce on a bigger scale. Because
mass produced.
Yes, correct. Because for businesses to sustain, they need to make more, and when they make more, means that the production time needs to be cut for each piece. For example, you take 1 day to make 1 vase.
Yeah.
But now they will take in 1 day they'll make probably about 200 vases. So the time is cut short just to make enough pieces so that it can be sold fast as souvenirs.
To supply the demand of the market.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why our timeline only stretches from like it ends around the time of the decline. But the main differences I can see from the early West till now, I mean to about 10, 20 years ago, would be the the function of the items.
Okay.
Yeah, so most pottery factories in Kuching, they came from China. They started off as brick factories. Yeah, from there, they started making roof tiles. Then they started making like bowls, utilitarian for you to use at home. Like we have one example of a very early bird feeder for chickens. You know the black and white thing. Yeah. We have one of those, and it's totally made of clay. Then we have spittoons to pui noa.
Okay.
Flower pots.
Okay.
Everything which was used in the early years because we didn't have like plastic and so the basins were also made of ceramic.
Okay.
So through the years, they thought of, okay, why don't I make this? Since these things have already been made, I can improve. So they started making bigger items like vases. Then from there they reached the peak, which is late 1970s to 1980s. It was the peak already. They already managed to sharpen their skills and everything, and they produced amazing Sarawak pottery with very, very good carvings and themes of the local scenes, like the Dayak woman and stuff like that, the designs. Yeah. So to me, it's so distinctive because the technology was actually Chinese, right?
Okay.
And they actually put in elements from what they saw locally into the artwork.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So meaning they actually insert, or not to say insert, they
capture
the local culture inside
something
the
Chinese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So actually there is the integrations of different culture and arts.
Correct. And I also heard that some of our vases from the 1960s, 70s to 80s actually made it into the Shanghai or the Shanghai Museum of China.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. You mean our local artists there?
Okay, I wouldn't say local artists. I would say as, like a vase which is made in Sarawak by Chinese, overseas Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they actually can, like capture the local culture here.
Correct.
Into the art.
Yeah, it is actually that unique.
Oh, okay.
That it actually made it to the museum in China. Yeah, because it's still made by Chinese.
Wow. OK， 所以刚才 Tuson 就有说到，我们大概简略的解释一下陶瓷在本地的演变史了，就是从中国流传下来过后，在本地呢也是会被当地人或者是一些在海外的华侨记录起来，就是通过陶瓷来展现当地的一些文化或者是艺术元素哦。那既然就现在就说到这个，刚才Tuson也有说到，目前的这个陶瓷品算是来到了一个没落的趋势，因为已经被工业化了，就是纯手工艺制作的陶瓷品可能已经渐渐被遗忘了。像是可能之前本来可能需要1天制成的陶瓷品，可是现在呢可能1天就可以制成200件，所以这个陶瓷已经是被大量生产或者是被工业化了。所以你觉得工业化对陶瓷行业会带来怎样的影响呢？就是它的好跟坏。Like we talk about the industrializations of the pottery, like you mentioned just now, probably because the quality may drop while the quantity increase. So are there any other impacts on this pottery industry, the pros and cons?
I think the pros would be, of course, you can just sell the products out very fast and get a lot of money. But the cons would be, why are you selling out your products at a lower quality and spreading all over the world for something which is not very good to look at? You don't show the potential of the craftsman and the identity of the country. You're showing off something which is mass produced by a mold rather than a proper artisan carving the work and selling it out.
Then, speaking of this, how do you think we can get a balance, between to maintain the quality and also it can be mass produced?
I think quality and mass produced is hard to match. But what can happen would be, why we are doing this exhibition is to spark the interest of the public. So when the interest is there, more people would try to come and maybe give it a go. And if more people know how to make pottery, more people will produce more items. And when you have more items produced, there'll be a lot more choice. And you know, the quantity increase does not mean one factory produces 200 pieces, but it can be 200 people producing one piece each. You know, so that piece is quality. That piece can go out overseas and it will bring the identity of Sarawak.
Tuson 刚才就有说到，其实在分量还有这个质量方面，可能要达成一定的平衡点，还是需要一点时间，也需要更多人去认识这个陶瓷的这个价值在哪里。那刚才我们也有说到这个沙拉约的陶瓷品嘛，其实沙拉约的陶瓷一般上，人家一说到沙拉约的陶瓷，就会想到两种不同的类型，一个就是本地土著的陶瓷，然后另外一种就是中国的陶瓷。那可以请你和我们说一说这两者有什么差别吗？ The differences between the Chinese pottery and also the Dayak pottery.
The main difference is the temperature of firing.
Okay.
So an Iban pot or a Dayak piece of pottery. Okay, the Dayak pot would be normally fired in a wood fire, which is probably a pit fire, which is you dig a hole and put the pot in and then fire it. Or it's fired like basically you build a bonfire and throw the pots in. So the temperature would be, it can reach over 1,000 degrees, but it will never reach because by the time it tries to reach that temperature, the pots will be all broken because of the technology of how they make the pots. So that's why the temperature is very low. So maybe about 600, maybe even less than 600 degrees to get the outer layer of the clay cured. Then as they use the pot, you know, the Dayak pots, as they use it, they cook rice in it or whatever it is, it will actually harden. Yeah. Whereas for the Chinese pots, they are fired in a proper kiln and they are normally glazed. Then to glaze a pot, you need over 1,000 degrees.
Higher temperature.
Yeah, so I would say the temperature about 1,200 degrees to 1,006. Yeah, that's the main difference, the type of firings.
Then in terms of the, you know, the materials.
Material-wise, okay, for a Dayak pot, it will never be glazed. It's always earthenware, pottery. Whereas for the Chinese type, it's always glazed and it's fired at a very high temperature. Yeah, but for the clay itself, the Chinese people will also use our local clay, and the Dayaks will also use the local clay because we are all here. It's impossible to import clay from China, bring it all the way to make. Yeah, it's impossible. So the clay is the same. It's just the technology is different.
Then usually where do we get the raw material, the clay, in local?
Okay, you can get them from the flower pot factories if they will sell it to you.
Or
you can go to your backyard and dig, because Sarawak is known for its biggest clay deposit in probably Southeast Asia.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So meaning it's actually quite easy to obtain the raw material.
It's very easy to obtain the raw material in sense that if you're a hobbyist, you don't use so much. Yeah, so you can actually process your own from your own backyard or maybe go to the river and dig because you won't be using a lot. Yeah.
But actually different types of the ceramic or the pottery, they have different ingredients, right? So normally people, even if they get the raw material, they have to know how much the portions of the ingredients, like how to mix to become a
for clay itself, normally we don't need to mix too many things in. It's if you want to mix, you can, but if you want to use it pure, you also can. The mixture is just to, you know, to alter the chemistry so that the shrinkage of the clay isn't that great. Because clay, as you know, is very fine. So when it's dry, the water will disappear. And when the water disappears, the item shrinks. So the more it shrinks, the more water goes away, the smaller the item goes. And when you heat it up again, it gets even smaller. So basically when we add things inside, is to basically stop it from shrinking that much. Yeah, for example, if you add sand or you add grog is clay which has already been fired, so it doesn't shrink that much. So when we add the powder into the clay, it will stop the item from shrinking. That's most of the things that are added inside the clay. But other than that, no need.
What about the color of the pottery? Like sometimes we get to see some blue color of it or brown color.
Okay, for the color, it's for the external color it's called glaze. So the glaze, that one, any color, you can use any color you want. But for the clay itself, the clay body itself, there are predominantly 3 colors, which is white, terracotta, and a terracotta and white mix. Yeah, that's how they make the marble clay as well when they overlap.
Okay. So that's considered the natural color.
Natural color.
Oh,
It is a
okay.
natural color.
Other than that, it will be
Glaze.
哦，OK OK， 所以其实就是陶瓷也有不一样的这个制作方式。那在颜色方面呢，通常在本地的这个陶瓷呢是只有3种颜色，那其他的呢就是上釉，然后你就可以有不一样的这个颜色。那既然说到砂拉越陶瓷，所以刚才我们也大概看了中国的这个陶瓷，还有本地达亚的这个陶瓷的差别哦，主要是在温度，他们制作的这个方面是有不一样的。那也不晓得杜森你会如何定义砂拉越陶瓷呢？就是 how would you define Sarawak pottery? What kind of element does it need to be?
Okay, in the past, Sarawak pottery, although it was at its peak, normally you will find the word Sarawak on most of the pots, most of the vases. You have carved in Sarawak, Kuching Sarawak, you know. But I feel that all those are not really important because the elements of design already show that it's typically Sarawak. That was for the past. For the contemporary part, which is now, I think we do not need to actually label
the
a
Sarawak,
pot as,
the name of it.
Yeah, we don't have to engrave it in because we need to create an identity to represent without telling people it is Sarawak.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
of course, if you ask me right now, I would say that because not many people have started making or started being interested yet, so you can't really see a trend yet. So it's hard to actually put in place what is Sarawakian pottery, what is Sarawak pottery. But as more people do it, you would be able to see, for example, the clays and everything. Because our clay is quite distinctive. We have the terracotta clay, which is very deep brown because of the iron content, and you have the white clays, and we have the mixed clays. So if people, collectors around the world, actually pay attention to the clay itself, they can actually tell. Yeah, and also maybe like for the maker's marks, the chops and everything, you know, like for English ware, like Johnson Brothers. It's so famous. You say Johnson Brothers, you know it's from England.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, maybe we can have, for example, I use a hornbill head as my maker's mark. I don't have the word Sarawak, but I have a hornbill head as my logo. I mean, hornbill head, Sarawak.
Sarawak,
it's like,
land
it's
of hornbill.
Correct. So things like that. So I wouldn't say that there is a very distinctive, you need to actually carve in the word Sarawak to make a piece from Sarawak. Yeah.
I think it's also for us to figure out what's our identity to make us different from the others.
Correct.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the value of pottery, in your opinion?
Value of pottery. Value of pottery. I think pottery is valuable only if it speaks to you, especially if it's a cup, for example, or a plate. When you buy a piece, it doesn't have to be a perfect piece. It doesn't have to be like, pure white, like Chinese porcelain from the factory. There's nothing wrong with it.
Everything is perfect.
Everything is perfect. As long as you are happy using the piece and you enjoy looking at the piece, that's the most important. The perfect imperfection makes the thing valuable to me.
Yeah. I think most importantly is the connections between the person with the pottery.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's say if it's a maker and the item, the artisan will make the item. The artisan puts in all to make the item. You know, whatever it is, you can definitely feel the connection between the piece and the maker. It's not as if it's like, I make the thing and I make 100 things and everyone is the same. You know? Every piece is different for pottery. So that's what makes it very special. Yeah.
So there's no so-called same pieces, right? Even from the same maker.
Correct.
Everything is
Correct.
Every pottery is different.
Yeah. Correct.
OK， 那现在就说到这个陶瓷工艺也是逐渐凋零嘛，所以你觉得我们本地的这个陶瓷业主要还面对怎样的挑战呢？ The challenges you face in this industry.
Challenges I face in this industry. Okay. When I first started out, majority of the challenge was finding materials like glaze and also the kiln and the potter's wheels or the machinery. Basically, it doesn't exist in Kuching.
Wow.
Yeah, you need to import it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically that time you just like asking around.
Yeah. Correct. And even for like how to do the items, but okay, I generally had all the background already because I did it in Singapore. But when I came back to Kuching, it was like, who do I go to?
The equipments,
Yes,
the facilities.
So I was very lucky because I had my mom had a friend, Mr. Goh, from Sarawak Pottery last time.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was really very supportive. I mean, they were not doing pottery at that time. The factory had already closed, but he was really supportive. He actually gave me his old pottery wheel, and kiln, his very small kiln, for me to experiment until I managed to purchase one on my own.
Wow.
So that's how supportive he was lah. Yeah.
So that was the early time when you just started your workshop.
2018.
2018.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So after you started your workshop and now you start to have students to learn from you, right?
Correct.
What other challenges you faces?
Other challenges besides materials and machinery would be the acceptance of how pottery is made. It is made with care, but you cannot have a fixed idea of what it's going to be because after firing, it will come out different. Yeah, so the expectance, what you expect, that is very hard for people to learn. That is a very big challenge because let's say they want a bowl, they make a bowl, but the final bowl would be different from what they imagine it to be. Yeah, so if they do not like the final product because they already preconceive that the final product should look like what they are making, that's the challenge. To make people realize that it's like a baby. When the baby comes out, you have to love the baby. So it's the same as pottery. Once you put it inside the kiln, when it's ready after 12 hours of firing, you open the kiln, you accept it. It's like a new baby is born, Every piece is like a baby. You cannot say, oh, I want my baby to be perfect without birthmarks or everything. Sometimes your baby will come out, with maybe one finger lost. But you will still love the baby.
Yeah.
So that is something which is very hard to get people to understand. And it's a real challenge.
So that one is, the one you mentioned is about the challenges you face, right?
Yeah.
In terms of getting the pieces they want. So how about the circumstance or the environment here in local? Do you think the people have enough acceptance or appreciations toward the pottery?
I think they are starting.
They
are starting. They're starting.
Okay.
I mean, I think our event has been really successful. I mean, people have been looking at the dinnerware when they actually came for the event, for the Dine on Clay event. And people were quite impressed with what our local products, materials could make. Yeah, because I think I received quite a number of comments saying that my pieces look very Japanese.
Whoa.
Yeah, which I don't have any Japanese influence at all. It's just how I accept the pieces. Yeah.
You're like starting to get out of, forming a own style, kind of Japanese style,
Yeah. I would say Japanese style.
Okay.
But I'll say Tuson style.
Tuson style, yeah.
Correct.
Start to have your own distinctiveness.
Correct.
So, as the craft is deemed a dying art for someone actually, what would you do continuously to revive the pottery in Sarawak? Now because now we can see that you have these exhibitions and as you comment just now, the people start to have this kind of awareness and reconnections toward the pottery. So what will you do next?
I think basically since the awareness is being created, there should be a continuity for maybe I will start to make the classes bigger.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe expand on classes to have more different age groups of people coming in. Because for now, I only do adult pottery classes because for kids, the understanding is not there. If they're too young, they won't be able to understand how clay works.
True.
Yeah, but maybe it's a good thing to have activities related to clay rather than have them play directly with clay making a bowl or whatever. Just related so that they can start the awareness.
So basically, it's still from young to increase their
awareness.
The awareness.
Right, the awareness of clay and
of clay.
What clay can become. It doesn't have to be fired. As long as they start young, they touch clay, they know, oh, this is clay. Not scared of it. Or like for example, a kid who never goes out, then when they see clay, oh, dirty, they're not touched, that sort of thing. So awareness. Once they're aware, they would gradually accept pottery and pots and then artwork, and then it just flows.
对对对，其实说到这个培养当地人对这个陶土的一个兴趣，可能最初的一个目的就是先要让他们认识到底什么是陶土。因为像图森刚才也提到了一个蛮有趣的一点，就是可能现在目前一些小孩子都很少踏出去外面，可能看到陶土就会觉得很肮脏，然后就不想去触碰。可是如果连触碰的机会都不给他们的话，就更不要说是完成一个陶制品。所以从小培养他们的兴趣，还有他们对陶土的认识也是非常重要的。那最后呢，想请图森来和我们说说你对陶瓷品未来有一个怎样的展望？ What would be your expectations towards the future of pottery?
Future of pottery, I really hope to see that more people would get involved and in the pottery industry. I mean, whether it be on a commercial basis or a hobby basis, because clay and pottery is not just about making a plate or a vase. It's the process. The process itself is one of the main reasons why I also love pottery so much. It's very relaxing. It's very therapeutic. The material itself, you can form it from a lump of clay, which is basically shaped into something which is so beautiful, just by using your hands. Yeah. So that's one of the main I'm trying to bring across this idea that pottery is very versatile and it should be accepted by everyone at least once in their life.
Wow.
At least once in their life, you should try to make something. Yeah, because like for myself, even for my own dinnerware, I make my own plates.
Wow.
So somehow the food tastes better.
Yeah.
like my coffee cup, I make my own coffee and I use my own cup. Somehow the coffee tastes better.
Yeah, that's the connections lah.
Correct.
For
Because you
with
made
the
it.
pottery.
Yeah.
对，所以说到这个对未来的展望 ，so maybe probably you wish like everyone get the chance to make their own craft like
At least once in
at
their
least
life.
once lah.
Yeah.
Okay.
To understand the material.
To really feel it,
To
right?
feel it, yeah.
So how about the bigger picture, like what else can the government do, the state government or the related units can help you to revive this pottery industry?
Okay, so for now, ceramics is still on one of the top lists of Sarawak handicrafts, right? So perhaps maybe more promotion could be done. For example, having more, road shows on showcasing pottery works, local pottery works. Maybe even, make it part of annual event. Maybe like a pottery festival or something. Because I think the main reason is because of not enough makers, not enough to show, nothing to show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if on my part, we can train people to make more things. Maybe that would actually create even a small industry, to revive the industry. Yeah, which is actually a very good thing. I mean, in the past, everybody who came to Sarawak would bring home at least one piece of pottery. My grandparents, when they visited Kuching, every time they'll carry back giant vases.
Wow.
Yeah, just to give away. Because it's so
as
pretty.
a souvenir.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so still need the cooperations
Correct.
with the
Besides-
related units lah.
Yeah, and besides that also, it is really hard to acquire clay in Kuching, although it is so plentiful because of the restrictions by the government. Yeah, so basically you need to get licenses and everything just to extract clay for. Yeah, so let's say if you own a piece of land, you own the land with the top, but you don't own anything below. So you cannot
okay.
dig. You
dig.
need to get permits from the maybe Jabatan Tanah Tan Uko and all that. Yeah, and it's
So still very, very strict in
yeah,
terms. Okay.
it is still very strict.
Okay.
So maybe maybe the tourism ministry could look into promoting it as part of an event as well, like annual event. I think that'll be very helpful for the industry, for especially the makers, the small time makers.
Yeah, looking at the bigger pictures, you still need a lot of the collaborations between different units, and each of them play different roles to revive the pottery. And of course, I think the local people need to have the appreciations towards this to show more support when there's chance to learn.
Correct.
所以来到今天节目的尾声呢，真的是非常开心和图森聊了这么的愉快也聊了这么的轻松，就是带我们认识沙拉约的陶瓷它的特点啊，还有就是未来还能够怎样的去更好的发展。谢谢图森今天的分享，也希望未来呢有机会再邀请图森来到今天的节目和我们分享更多他的陶瓷作品咯。谢谢你图森。 Thank you, Tuson.
Thank you. And last but not least, I would like to thank Chandana. They are the supporters of this event. Chandana.
Oh,
correct.
Okay.
So this is actually a Chandana funded project for arts in the city.
Yeah. Other than this, do you still have any other words to speak to the audience or the listeners or your supporters, throughout your journey?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who has been supporting me throughout the years. And please, anyone who hasn't come for Naked Broccoli of Sarawak, please drop by. We are open until the 20th of March for the exhibition. And from the 21st onwards, for 1 week, we will be having our sales at the Steamship building as well, at Restaurant Budaya. And you can have a chance to buy some of our artworks there.
Yeah. And then you also have Dine on Clay, right?
Dine and Clay ends on the 20th.
I still have chance, right, for this weekend to
very
go there?
very limited seats.
Oops.
I think everything is almost sold out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for the 4 to 6 session, the first session, we have maybe about 2 seats left. But other than that, it's sold out.
So for more info, how do we get to access the information? Go to your Facebook
to our
page?
Facebook or our Instagram page, Gardencraft Co.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So 如果是在古晋的朋友，或者是刚好在这段期间来到古晋的朋友，对这个陶瓷展有兴趣的话，就不要错过了。那更多的详情呢，就可以到 Gardencraft 的 Facebook 还有Instagram 去搜索这一些相关的资讯。好，今天的节目呢就暂时分享到这里，真的非常开心，图森来到节目做客，谢谢你，图森。
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.